So John Paul here from GOUSA and with Doug Wade from PureSocialNetwork.com and the great Jack Posobiec.
Great, yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks for your time and thanks for everything you're doing for our country. And I can't wait to read your book. Jack just signed his book for me, so thank you.
I did, and thank you as well for buying it. I appreciate that.
Of course, you're an American hero really for what you're doing. Thank you.
Well, it's. I just saw so much that was going on with this movement, and really it was during 2016 when Antifa, I first encountered them, and it was because I was going and covering. I know this is funny to think of, but back in 2016, nobody covered the Trump rallies, right? The idea that Trump got big crowds was not yet ubiquitous. It was only ubiquitous because it was covered by independent media. And so we would go to the rallies, we went to Hillary rallies too, and we filmed the size of the crowds, and people, this is during the primaries, and we would say, wow, look how big this is getting. But then there would be this group in like black masks that would show up, and then they'd start provoking people, they'd start attacking people, and CNN would always have the headline, that's how they would phrase it, they would say, violence breaks out at Trump rally, right? So violence breaks out. And so they never say who did the violence. You just see violence and Trump in the same headline, which of course is meant to make the viewer think, mislead the viewer into thinking that there was something involving Trump and violence, or Trump supporters and violence. But no, they were leaving a crucial element out of violence, and that was the group that later came. We didn't even know what the name was at first, but eventually we were able to identify them as Antifa, and then we've been doing more and more research, infiltration, and as you can see from the cover, confrontation of the organization, as well as going deeper and deeper into the origins of the anarcho-left, the really anarcho-tyrannical left that we see coming up in the United States today. And one thing that we do in the book that I don't think anybody covers in terms of Antifa, it's not just their ideology, but how they're employed by certain forces within the West, I suppose you could say, where if you notice, something very insidious has happened over the last 10 years, because when Antifa first came on the scene, at least the modern version, it was the Battle of Seattle, 1999, they were against China entering into the World Trade Organization. They were anti-globalist.
I never knew that.
Right, it's true.
Anti-globalist.
We cover that. Anti-globalist Antifa. Then, they called it the Battle of Seattle, 1999. Then, you had what? Of course, Occupy Wall Street, 2011. Just had the 10-year anniversary. Occupy Wall Street was anti-1%. Fast forward 10 years, though, and suddenly Antifa is on the same side as Citibank, as Bank of America, the Federal Reserve, the World Economic Forum, Davos. And it says, wait a minute, hold on. How is it that this organization that seems to have had a populist background has now been subverted and is actually working for those at the highest levels of power in the West, right? And we cover that in the book, and how you have a situation whereby Antifa thinks of themselves as revolutionaries, but what they actually are the shock troops of the ruling class, in effect.
People are paid, hitmen, essentially. Just do what we tell you to do. Create chaos. Go to this location.
But not just chaos. Chaos against certain targets, specific targets. That's the key. That's the key. And then you can see, and of course we talk about, I wrote this book prior to Gen 6, and then Gen 6 happened while we were in the final stages of publication, and I said, guys, pump the brakes on this. Literally had to say, hold the presses, because we needed to add another 2 chapters about what had happened on Gen 6, about the infiltration, and about these groups like the Boogaloo Boys that had no bearing whatsoever to the MAGA movement, yet actually, because of their anarchist ties, bear a lot of similarities to groups that we've seen in the past that have been involved with the federal government, the FBI, and then also, obviously, the dichotomy between the crackdown on Trump supporters post-Gen 6 and the inverse of how the FBI went soft gloves on Antifa. And that's actually the first chapter of the book. So something that wasn't even written, hadn't occurred by the time we were writing the book is now the first chapter, because what I do is I take you into the Oval Office and
Wow.
actual conversations between Trump, Chris Wray over that Resolute desk, what was said, Trump getting to the point where he's actually cursing out Chris Wray for not doing anything about Antifa, and Chris Wray kind of leaning back saying, hey, that's just an idea, that's just an ideology.
So Chris Wray was just totally, basically effectively supporting them. I mean, he denied
it's like
he
a
denied
tacit
their
support. It's like a
tacit
tacit support.
That's right. And this is in the Trump White House. We're not talking about the Biden White House.
Oh yeah. Oh
This
yeah.
is the Trump White House. This guy's doing this.
100%.
So you were in
Corruption's
DC. You're in
ridiculous.
DC, right?
Yeah,
so
unfortunately.
You're seeing a lot of
Yes.
stuff really up close. I've been to several rallies in November, December, and January. I was there. And I saw the dynamics. I watched it for myself. I saw these guys assembling. I saw them pulling up in black and heading towards the Capitol in that red, white, and blue.
Right.
And I saw that stuff. I saw the police supporting them. I saw them escorting people. You know?
Well, what I would always-
safe passage. And it's like,
Well, what I would always see is that because Women for America First, they created this group, and this is they want to subpoena them. This unconstitutional committee wants to go after them. But to your point, they held multiple rallies prior to January 6th that were always peaceful, except what the dynamic was is that Antifa would show up at night because they didn't want to go when the rally was.
Is that right?
Right. So and we
they're
would
way
go.
outnumbered.
Right, so they were way outnumbered. They wouldn't show up until people were back at their hotels. They'd either go to the hotel, and people would throw shooting fireworks off. That was a tactic they
Yeah.
used. And they would go after you when you're at a hotel, when you're at a restaurant. They would look for people with the red hats. So my brother and I would dress up on those nights as Antifa, and then go and infiltrate them. But then
Wow.
we weren't pushing them. All we were doing was documenting. All we were doing was documenting what they were doing. So we would run with the Black Bloc. But have our cameras out surreptitiously, filming what was going on live in many cases. This is all you can see it
That's guts.
on Twitter Live.
That's guts.
That's true.
That's
And
this guy's
you
got.
know, well, it's something where my wife, as you can imagine, when this happened, that was not an infiltration thing. But she was a little upset with me that night, as you can
Yeah, I
imagine.
would think she's not too
And,
happy with Jack that night.
Put it this way, I
You
made
say
sure.
you dressing her for Halloween. You're right.
Not only that,
seriously,
she was she was pregnant when this happened. As a matter of fact.
Oh
So-
my God.
So it was like I've got an angry pregnant Belarusian wife at home waiting for me. When I told her the last text she's got from me is, "Sweetheart, I'll be home as soon as I'm done filling out the police report," which is never something you want to be saying. And but I will say this, and to all the guys out there watching this one, I say, here's the move. Now I'm still standing here today unscathed. How did I do that?
Thank God.
Before I got home, I stopped off flowers, chocolate,
There you go.
and I held it in front of me like a human shield. I said, "Sweetheart, I love you. I love you." Because
Flowers
I
and
don't
chocolate.
know. She was going to give it to me worse than Antifa did.
yeah.
She was going to give it to me worse, but then I get that. And that
You had some scabs. You might have had to visit the emergency room possibly.
Right.
What happened, Antifa? No. That was after Antifa.
It was pregnant Belarusian.
So on a simpler note, I don't know if you know who Charlie Downs is.
Charlie Downs.
He's he runs he's a part of the Madison Coalition, part of GOUSA now, and he was attacked by Antifa.
Wow.
And in DC, he got 12 million views. Trump retweeted it 3 or 4 times, at least a couple times. He made comments. He got 12 million views on it, and him and his girlfriend were attacked in DC.
I saw that video.
And
I didn't know his name.
no charges.
Yeah, I must have
like
seen the
Stan-
video, but I didn't know his name. Yeah.
Yeah, Charlie Downs is his name, and he was trying to get around, trying to find a safe passage through to get home from work. And but once again, there's no charges. I mean, this is an outright attack.
So this is
Chemicals
why
on
we,
it, but no
this is
charges.
why we
The
call
stupid
this
mayor.
tactic.
The mayor in
as-
DC is terrible.
It's not. You gotta understand. She's incredibly effective because she is carrying out her plan. Right? She's doing exactly what she's doing. She wants certain elements to be allowed into Washington, D.C., and other elements to be kicked out and rejected. If you're a Trump supporter, if you're a conservative, if you're someone who believes in the Second Amendment, freedom of speech, pro-life, she wants you out. She wants to run you out of town. This is why, but at the same time, she'll lock you up if you don't put your mask on, and if you not mask your kids in schools. So this is why we call it anarcho tyranny. because they unleash the forces of anarchy while also employing the forces of medical tyranny.
Okay. Yep.
Wow, I love that term, and it's 100% right.
Listen, I actually have to get going because we're about to do the hosting.
You're hosting for tonight, so Jack's
I actually
hosting
have to get
tonight.
the program together and figure out what the heck I'm going to do hosting up there. I want to say thank you very much for
Sure.
the time. And,
Thank you, Jack. Thank you for everything you're doing. I can't reach it. Ray, what's the thing?
Get the book.
Hold your book. Hold the
It's a
book.
Navy intelligence officer.
The Antifa. Make sure you get this book. It explains everything that Jack was just talking about. It's an incredible read, so make sure you get it.
So
Support
yeah,
it.
Amazon, antifabook.com.
Okay, so get the
That's
book.
what you get. Yeah, exactly. Great. Thank you so much. All right, we'll
Thanks,
talk more
guys.
later. I literally do have to run this thing.